Thank you for joining us for our 8th episode of HeLPiNG Questions. I'm Dr. Luk, HeLPiNG Questions host. In today's episode, we will have the opportunity to ask Professor Gigi Luk our 8th HeLPiNG question. Professor Gigi Luk is an Associate Professor of Education and Counseling Psychology at McGill University, Montreal, Canada. Gigi's research is groundbreaking and absolutely fascinating and covers a wide range of topics that go from uncovering the neural and cognitive consequences of bilingualism to better understanding how diverse language experiences shape language development learning across the lifespan. Her work of bringing together science and education to improve the educational experience for children from diverse language backgrounds is especially noteworthy. Please take a seat and stay with us as we get to hear more from Gigi about what is the reality of learning 2 or more languages in school settings across the world.
Welcome, Gigi, to the 8th episode of HeLPiNG Questions. We're so excited to have you as our guest and to be able to discover together fascinating scientific facts about bilingualism. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Alicia. So before we begin, I think I should introduce myself a little bit. Not everybody knows who I am. So my name is Gigi Luk. I'm currently Associate Professor at McGill University. And what I have been doing is to look at the consequences of bilingualism across the lifespan, from young children to old adults. And what I do, my work in North America in general, in US and Canada, while it may not be applicable to all linguistic contexts around the world, but I'm very happy to share what I have learned so far with you and have a discussion with you and others to see how we can promote a more inclusive environment for multilinguals and beyond.
We're so excited to have you. Really so excited, Gigi. And of course, everyone knows who you are. And basically, exactly what you said, right? Considering the groundbreaking contributions that you've made to help us better understand both the cognitive consequences of bilingualism, but also how diverse language experiences shape the development and learning of 2 or more languages, we really couldn't think of a better scientist to ask our 8 HeLPiNG questions. So should we jump right in?
Of course.
Okay. Great. Then, Gigi, based on your experience, knowledge, and expertise, what is the reality, and by that, I mean challenges and trade-offs of learning 2 or more languages in school settings around the world?
This is an excellent question because I really appreciate the fact that you use the term realities because there is no benefits or disadvantage. It's always about the reality. So speaking from a North American context, I can share with you that many children are going to school in a language that may or may not be the one that they speak at home. So instantaneously, you already see 2 kinds of bilingualism happening here. For children who don't speak the school language or speak a home language that is different from an instructional language at school, they are already going through some form of transformation linguistically at school by learning not only a second language, but they're learning academic knowledge in a second language. On the other hand, there are also other opportunities. Some children may speak the language that the school primarily use as an instructional language, but at the same time, they also learn other languages in addition to the instructional language and home language. And in that case, they are also undergoing a linguistic transformation to acquire another language. But for example, in my work in the United States, it's very interesting to see that these 2 types of bilingual situations in schools are treated quite differently in some way, one way or the other. Very often, the children who speak a home language different from school language may show lower academic achievement or struggle with learning. On the other hand, we don't know much actually about children who are learning another language that are in addition to the dominant language that they speak at home and school already. So we still need to balance out and understand the multifaceted consequences of learning in this linguistic context. But all I can say is, as a human scientist, I think everybody can learn. And I really believe that all children has a potential. And what we just have to do is to open our eyes and recognize their strength to help with their challenges. So the reality is, in a nutshell, is not as simple of having a benefit or not. The reality is complex, and we need to face these complex realities to find solutions to the problems.
Thank you, Gigi. I cannot agree more with you. And I love also how nuanced, right? And how you stress the, like the universality, but also the diversity, right? And how we have to stress that every person, every children, every, individual brings their own unique set of gifts, right? And experiences to the table. And that we have to actually acknowledge and celebrate that, right? So then, since I have you here, I'm gonna actually basically take advantage of that to ask you, in based on your research, but also on your opinion as an expert, as well as the mom of a beautiful multilingual child, are there any specific ways in which you think we could improve all those many realities that you just described to us?
Yes, I mean, I have a lot of experience, of course. So I'll start with what's happening at home. Okay. So at home, I speak Cantonese and English to my son, who's now 13 years old. He is quite bilingual to some extent, and he also learned French at school and Spanish as a subject. So I think I experienced these realities myself as a parent, and the important thing that I have learned is respect for languages. So if languages are respected at home, then a child is actually more willing to acquire, to learn, to overcome the challenges of learning a new language. And I think the social respect is very important in the family, that languages should not have status. I mean, we live in the universe where languages are assigned power as a social construct by our society around the world. It happens everywhere. But within the family, one thing I find more effective is that the family respect all languages. And that really creates an atmosphere and a safe environment for a child to learn and make mistakes and understand that languages are spoken by different people, and be, in a way, be more linguistically inclusive when they develop their cognitive capacity to learn.
I this is so useful, I think, and so important, right? Like this idea that we need to be respectful. And even if, of course, we live in a society where there are also this social construct, right? That sometimes, even if we would love and we're working really hard to deconstruct, we also cannot ignore, right? So yes, I thank you for that so much. And since we have the fortune of having you here, I was wondering if you have any specific advice that you, and I'm sure so many people, as an expert and someone so kind and with so much experience, I'm sure many teachers and school administrators and parents have asked you if you have any specific type of advice as to how we can, help develop and maintain bilingualism in children and also adults, but specifically let's talk about children inside and outside of the school context. I'm sure many people ask you that, and I'm sure many of the people that have been following these videos, I'm sure they would love to know a bit more about what you have to say.
So I won't say I'm giving advice. I will share with you what I have learned in my context,
Okay.
because education is a very unique field in which it's very context specific. So what works for me and what I observed in Montreal, in Boston, US, may not be applicable to everywhere. But there is always some grains of knowledge that we can share with each other. So one thing that I want to stress here is that bilingualism does not automatically indicate biliteracy. There are quite different process. I personally have worked with many bilingual, multilingual children who are not necessarily multiliterate. They can only read in one language. And that happens to the two types of bilingualism that happens in school that I talked about in the beginning of the video. The one who speak different languages at home and at school and learn at the school context. These children typically can only read and write in the school language, but not necessarily their heritage language. And for the other side, those children actually are more likely to be biliterate because they have already got the dominant home language, learning in both spoken and literate form. And in their new language, the additional language, they also learn through literacy. So there are different trajectories and outcome. And for practitioners, I think it's important to recognize that. Currently, we still don't know a lot about the relationship between whether bilingualism facilitate biliteracy or the other way around. Think about how when an adult learns a second language, it is mostly through literacy. And so how do we take advantage of knowing these across the lifespan research findings to facilitate and enrich education for young children, particularly in a multilingual context, is what I think could be the next step, frontiers of our research here.
Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating, right? I think there's so many open questions, but then I think that also makes me feel so hopeful. And that's a great point, right? Oftentimes, right, I think what you stress about like adult second language learning, mostly we do it when we do it in a formal context, is through reading mostly, right? And then, you know, child bilingualism looks a bit different because of the literacy aspect is still in development, and it might be very different also depending on the languages and the societal context. So what can we do as a society to promote biliteracy and literacy across the board, right? And I think this has a lot to do, I don't know if you agree, with like working together to fight against inequality as well, and which I know that you are really working hard to also try to accomplish like collectively. Gigi, really, thank you so much for your very insightful answers, for your work, your commitment, and for helping us all better understand the realities, as we said, of learning two or more languages in the school context, but also in these inherently multilingual and diverse societies we live in, and how to best support the development and maintenance of bilingualism across the lifespan. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. I'm sure many people are going to find your episode very helpful, and thank you so much for your generosity and for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
We really hope you enjoyed our HeLPiNG question, and that Gigi's fascinating scientific insight and professional experience helped you to better understand what is the reality of learning two or more languages in school settings across the world, and also learn some concrete and valuable things about what we can all do to support child bilingualism. Stay tuned for our next episode coming to you on January 20th. We will get to ask Professor Dave Miller, Assistant Professor of Spanish and Linguistics at the University of Illinois at Chicago, in Chicago, United States, our 9th HeLPiNG question. Do we feel things differently when we speak our first versus our second language? We look forward to seeing you all back here on January 20th. Also, don't forget to subscribe and to share with us your thoughts, feedback, and comments on any of our social media channels. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you back here for our next HeLPiNG question on January 20th. Bye-bye.